We're live. Hey, everybody. Todd Schroth here, Agents Who Win. Appreciate you guys tuning in today. Our goal today is to bring winning attitudes for agents, and I appreciate everyone tuning in. I've got my good buddy Laurence Heisler here with the mortgage firm. Laurence, I appreciate you jumping in today. When we talked to the guest about what we want the topic to be, he threw back, will the market crash? So this is a common question right now. And so let's talk about, will this market crash, or what do we see for, Q3, Q4, and going into 2022 and 2023?
Yeah, so I always love throwing some stats out there just to kind of put things into perspective. And one of the stats that I love is that Google searches asking the question, when is the housing market going to crash, have risen 2,450%. So obviously this is at the top of a lot of people's minds right now, right? So, we're starting to see more and more interest. I think a lot of people who have lived through the 2008 crash are starting to say, hey, are we going down this road again? Is this where we're at? Some of the reasons for the concern, Todd, and again, I'm sure you look at these stats all the time, but the median price of homes has risen to $329,000 right now. And that's the highest on record. And it's 17.2% higher than it was March of last year. So year over year, we're over a 17% increase in the median sales price of homes. Here's one I love. So lumber prices have increased 300% since the pandemic began. 300%. So that equates to a $24,000 increase in the average price of a new home. So this is some of the things that we're seeing that has the concern out there. The average time to sell is 18 days right now, and half of the homes are selling within a week. So if you're listing a lot of homes like you guys, you know how quickly those things are going. And I think all of these statistics are kind of showing the concern that we have in this market going on right now.
So it's funny you say some of those stats. I've got some comments on them. So I'm working with a new subdivision called the Sanctuary up in Apopka, and we had one we were using as a to be built. Price was $499, and we came back and we had to take it off the market because the builder who's building it is building it as on a cost plus for the developer. And cost plus, when you go up 300% on the main product of the home, rose the price of that house 10%. So we actually took it off the market. Once we get further under dry, whatever the stage you want to call it, under roof, then we're going to put it back on the market. But now that $500,000 house has now become $550, and totally changes the buyer pool as well for that property, for what's coming in there. And I'm working with two buyers right now. And one, they're calling me every 5 minutes. Hey, can you go FaceTime that house? Can you go FaceTime that house? And they just moved to Georgia in January, hated up there, now moving back. And they're like, this was not the market that we just sold in. What's going on? And so I'm texting with them last night. And then this morning, I'm like, well, that house that you wanted to buy just went under contract and that you wanted me to go look at this morning. And it was listed yesterday. Yesterday, I go and preview, or I was showing a buyer a house for a second time. We had the contract sent to her last night. This morning, sends me a text. Hey, this is 6 a.m. New listing popped up on her feed. I want to take a look at it. Text the agent. He's a friend of mine. He goes, well, I got 17 showings today, and I'm doing an open house tomorrow. We'll see your offers on Sunday. I was like, geez,
Wow.
So it's just the common play of there's no inventory, and the good product is going to sell quickly. And it's not even 8 days. It's really 8 hours. So it's like, how can this sustain when you have an 18% increase in market last year, and then probably an 8% the year before? We are pushing a lot higher than what we used to be. And how does the affordability factor, I guess, come into play as well?
Yeah. Well, and all good questions. And so we got a lot of factors that we need to look at. And, one of the things that I will tell you right off the bat that we need to look at is let's go back and visit 2008 again. Let's see what really happened to cause that market crash. At the time, we had this huge demand, but we also had an even bigger supply, right? So people were wanting to buy a house and flip them. Everybody was buying and flipping, and that was the whole goal then. Hey, let's make $50,000 in 2 months, right? And it was happening so quickly that it became like wildfire. Well,
Yeah.
that's completely different than it is today, right? Today, we've got a demand, but we don't have supply. We've got a super limited supply. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal because the overabundance of supply had a lot to do with why that market crashed. Okay? The other thing is financing. So we all know that was a completely different world we lived in as far as financing goes in 2008 or prior to 2008. You pretty much needed a pulse, right, to get a loan those days. And everybody knew that. Everybody was taking advantage. They were getting loan after loan after loan and buying. I knew people that, had jobs where they made $30,000, $40,000 a year and they owned 4 or 5 properties. And it was just crazy, right? So a lot harder to get a loan today than it was back then. And we've learned from our mistakes. So, my opinion is we're not going to see a market crash. We're going to see some adjusting coming up. And that adjusting is going to be in the supply and demand. And I think we're going to see some changes in interest rates potentially. That's going to also help to taper that crazy demand that we have right now. And we're going to start to see those adjustments probably come into play later this year.
And what do you, just to, crystal ball, or not crystal ball, but what is the market rate right now? I mean, I've got somebody getting qualified on an FHA at 2.2% right now. I mean, it's like crazy low. How is that? I mean, where do you see that going in 6 months?
Yeah. So the big enemy of our market is inflation, right? So as long
I think we lost you.
I think I lost you for a second there.
Yeah, we lost you for a second. Yes.
All right. So yeah, so inflation is the big enemy of interest rates. What we are hearing, Todd, is that we're going to start to see inflation pressure increase here in the next few months. All right. The big driver of that is the economy. And, frankly, people got to, get back to work. We need to keep the momentum of people going back to work and getting their jobs, and small companies reopening. I don't think we've seen the complete impact of COVID on the economy. And I think that this year we're going to start to see more of that impact. So when inflation increases, so do interest rates. They're predicting this year the rates to go up, not dramatically though. I'm hearing that we're looking at maybe high 3s to low 4s at the max is what the analysts are predicting.
Okay. And I know we'll go back 4 months ago, when buyers when the market did shift up on rates real quick and then it did settle back down, what do you foresee happening there? I mean, do you see that they'll probably do that 1 point fluctuation again, throughout the year, or is it going to stay in the low, high 2s, low 3s?
I mean, they're saying that they're going to see some increases in rates, and then they really believe the rates are going to come back down. I mean, the long-term forecast for rates is great news for us, right? They're saying we're going to be in this range within a point of where we're at right now for the next probably 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And that's, I mean, just putting it into perspective, Todd. I mean, you and I've we've been around for a little while, and we've seen a lot of different interest rates. Not as much as maybe our parents did. I love hearing the stories of how, my first house or somebody's first house was at 17%, right? So when you go from maybe high 2s or low 3s to 4%, it's really not that big of a deal in the big scheme of things.
My stepdad sold his first house and it was 18% back in the 80s. And we would drive down the street. We'd point out that particular property. And I remember in 95 when I bought my first place, it was 18%. And I paid 3 points on that loan. And It was a rental property that I cash flowed. I mean, I bought a lot of rentals back in the late 90s, mid to late 90s with private money, and everything was 18%. But I was paying $30,000 to $40,000 for those properties. And, they were worth 60 to 70. And, those homes now are worth in the mid 100s, but, or more. And it was just crazy to sit there and say to people, like, I used to cash flow at 18%. Now I can't cash flow at 2% because it's all price. It's mostly price. But one thing I'm trying to get everyone to understand is, like, if you know how long you're going to be in your house for, and you need to sell on payment, not price, because we want to move up to a nice house. And if I can afford the payment, cool, then I know I can stay there for a long time. But if I'm trying to buy it on price and then the market does shift a little bit, that means I'm trying to exit out in the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and I'll share this with you. This is one of the things that we're talking to our clients about today, because we get this concern a lot too, Todd, is, hey, I don't want to pay too much for a house.
Yeah.
Well, a house is worth what you're willing to pay for it, number one, right? And number two, here's the challenge that I would give any buyer that's looking at buying in this market today. Go back and look at the history of home prices, all right? And you will see that the line has always gone up. Real estate, the safest investments that you will ever have, right? So with that in mind, we're going to look at somebody that potentially might be paying, let's say, $10,000 or $15,000 more than what a house is appraised at today. But in 5 years, 10 years down the road, they still own that house and it's worth $100,000 more than what they paid for it. Is it really that big of a concern today? So the payment, you're right, is the key. Buy a house and get a payment that's going to be in your budget and affordable. And that's exactly what I think people need to be the most concerned about today, not the crazy market that we're in that might end up buying a house for a little bit more than what somebody feels like the value of the house is worth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, the MLS, I was looking at comps last night on one, and the agent put in I guess there's like a sold only remarks now. So we know kind of what the details are in the transaction. And the house sold at 350, but only appraised at 335. And she put in there, the buyer brought $15,000 to the table to make the deal work. And, big question I'm having for clients right now is, how much money do you have? And, it's like, not that you only have 5%, but how much money do you have and where can we find the money? And I know we talked about this when we had a meeting the other day, is talking to the buyers about where they can pull different funds from to be able to put towards the transaction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing everything coming out today. It's like, pulling out all the tricks, because, a lot of, you got to keep in mind too, Todd, last year, when the pandemic hit, we shut down, right?
Yeah.
I mean, from March until probably late summer, nobody was out looking at houses or buying houses. So we've had flux of demand because there's been almost 6 months worth of buyers pent up, ready to come out buying. And our normal flow of buyers we have, plus all the glutton from last year, it's adding to this demand right now. That's what's driving these prices up. So some of the things that we're having our clients do is maybe pay for some of the seller's closing costs instead of raising the price up so high.
Yeah,
or
it's another $5,000 to $10,000 that you can play with there.
Yeah, and if there was ever a good time to reach out to relatives to possibly look at getting a gift or something like that to help bridge that gap, I mean, you got to pull out all the tricks today to get that deal to work, because we know how hot the market is.
Well, that's where we're sitting there, like, looking at the cash flow on them. And the true thing is, the value is what someone's willing to pay for a property between the buyer and the seller, not what the appraiser is. And I'm excited when we do get, an appraisal back in at market value. It means that the appraiser actually sees the market and is not adjusting 6 months back. He's adjusting 6 months forward. We just had one that we got back 2 days ago where the appraisal was $299, or no, so the sales price $299, appraisal came in at $269, and we were paying $10,000. They were paying $10,000 of the buyer's closing costs. Again, normally unheard in this market. But then the appraisal came down. The sales price got reduced down to the appraised value. Buyer waived the closing costs. I'm like, you're literally getting $30,000 off that house. You should pay your own closing costs. And they found the money to get it, and they're getting it done. But you're also not seeing sellers saying, "Yep, I'll come down $20,000 or $30,000 because of the appraisal."
Yeah, No, that's true. Now, I
Yeah.
have heard of agreements like that where a buyer's going to come in, they're going to pay more than what the house is being sold for, but the contingency is that the house needs to appraise it at that amount. If the appraisal
Yeah.
comes down to the original asking price, then the buyer or the seller will agree to drop the price down to that point.
Yeah.
So, I think today more than ever, there just has to be a lot of give and take on both sides to make a deal work. And the thing that I always point out, Todd, is that the sellers are like, "Hey, sell my house for sell my 1,000 square foot house for $1 million." This is where the market is. But we all know that there's certain things that that have to take place in order for that closing to go through, especially if
Yeah.
financing is involved. I mean, not
Yeah.
everybody's going to have a cash buyer come in at 30,000 above asking price and pay cash and close in 2 weeks. So the appraisal becomes a big potential issue. Even
Yeah.
things that we're seeing now, like the age of the roof, that becomes such a major thing. So I think it's important for your sellers or for sellers in general to understand, yeah, this is a great time to sell, but you got to still be within reason and it's still a negotiation, and you got to be willing to, look at the whole picture and make sure that you're not putting yourself in a position where you're not going to be able to close and you're going to have to relist again and, holding that property for longer than you should.
Yeah, I'm trying with my clients to get them to understand some reality there as well. There are some that are just being stubborn. I mean, we wrote an offer on this weekend. The agent, when I talked to him, he goes, and he was, come to find out he's got some ownership in the property as well. He's like, what I'm looking to accept is somebody who's willing to put down 15 grand non-refundable off the bat. And I'm like, with no inspections, no appraisal contingency. If you're willing to offer 355 on a 330 house, you got to be willing to play somewhere on that. And when I called him the next day to say how, what offer of the 25 that you got, did you take? He goes, well, we got somebody to put 10 grand down, non-refundable off the bat. I'm like, it's hard to get a buyer to explain this to a buyer. Hey, if you're going to do that, then this is, there's a lot of risk there. I'm not advising you on this. And we ended up just, we didn't get the deal, obviously. But we said, hey, we'll do the non-refundable after the inspections, but we don't know what's behind your walls. And, and I posted that comment on Facebook, and a lot of people are like, oh God, all of our offers have no inspections now. I'm like, that's just scary. You're doing it for informational purposes only.
Yeah. It is scary. I mean, you never know what's behind, the walls. And that's why you get a home inspection, right? I mean, there are termites in Florida. There's all kind of stuff that could affect, the viability of the house. So it's crazy. I think we're going to start to see things taper off, though, Todd. Getting back to the original topic about the market crash, we're not going to see a market crash. And we're going to just see a tapering, and I think we need it. I mean, the pace at which houses have been appreciating for the last couple of years has been, unbelievable. And if it continues at that pace, then we're going to be in a position to where your average person won't be able to afford a house. Period.
Right.
But again, supply and demand is the equalizer. If the pool of buyers starts to reduce more and more because sales prices are increasing and interest rates start to increase, then you're not going to have this craziness that's going on today. You're not going to have, 10, 15 offers on every property. And we're going to get back to a more level, stable housing environment. And that's where we'll see the adjustments, but we're not going to see the crash.
Well, if you go back to 2008 when the crash happened, it was, like you said, everybody with a pulse could walk in and buy 5 properties from a builder, and they would sell it to them. And, what was happening then, the rates were in the 4s. They were going to 5, 6, 7%. And so you still had that high price with those high rates, which then did kill it. And, now you have the high prices with such low rates that it's still affordable for people to buy a $500,000 house. I mean, if I was to buy $1 million house, I can be in it for $3,500 a month at 3.5%, roughly with, obviously tax and insurance. But that's crazy to think I can have that kind of house for like what I pay now on my current mortgage on a $500,000 house or whatever it is. So it's just, with the rates they are, I agree with you. They're not going to see a crash coming. And you also have a lot of Wall Street dumping money into real estate as well, still between Open Doors, Zillow, and these others paying retail pricing, not trying to buy at discounts because they're forecasting the market to keep going.
Yeah. I heard somebody say something interesting the other day. They said, if you pay more than what the appraised value is for a house, your house becomes a comp.
Yeah.
So in essence, you just raised your own market value.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Pretty cool. Pretty cool to think about it that way.
Yeah. I mean, you're creating the comp in the community, and it's funny because we just closed one a couple days ago. We 300,000 asking price, 307 sales price, and our contract price, and then they find out the AC's 26 years old and something else and some other issue that was in the house. So we come down to 300. I'm like, should have sold it at 307 and given a credit, and then you've got a new comp at 307 instead of 300. So it's like if you want to keep the numbers up, but obviously it's an investor. They don't want to pay the tax on the higher side, so bring the numbers down. But every time you push that number up, it just creates the next guy. Well, I can sell for 310 or 315. Especially in your own neighborhood, it's nice to see the sales go up because they're like, wow, I can get that for my house. Maybe we should move. But our next thing is now we've got to find inventory because we've got all these sellers who want to move and they can't, and that's part of the pent up demand is that there's nowhere for people to go. And there's such an influx of out of state buyers coming in. Talking with my team, a lot of our I call it in town buyers, they don't want to pay these over appraised or overvalued. Unlike the people that are coming from out of state because they've got a lot more cash to play with. Yeah.
It's adding to that demand that we're talking about, now you're not only bidding with other people in Central Florida looking to move, but you're bidding with a lot of people from New York and California that are also looking to move. So one thing I'll point out to you, Todd, and this is kind of cool. So looking at interest rates, I did a little investigating the other day, and I went all the way back to about 2015. And if you were buying a house in 2015, you would have, because of where the rates were, you would have paid about $40,000 more for that house than you would today.
Over the last 5 years?
From 2000, looking at the rates back in 2015 versus the rates today, just if you're basing it off of an equal payment, it would have been $40,000. You could afford $40,000 more of a house today with the same payment that you could in 2015. So even though the prices have gone up, the interest rates have come down. So it's been kind of leveling off. And we go back to that payment again. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the big driving factor that I want people to understand. I mean, here's one thing that if you're looking at buying a house and you're like, well, I don't know if I want to buy because I'm concerned about the market. Well, in the meantime, you're continuing to rent, which we all know is 100% waste of your money. Talking about the tax benefits of buying and being able to write off the interest and the real estate taxes on that property, not to mention the fact that every month you make a payment, you're paying down that loan. So it's like putting money in your bank account. Over time, that investment is going to continue to grow. You're going to get appreciation. You got a bigger tax write-off. So even if you're paying more for the house, those benefits alone are going to offset anything that you would be doing renting wise. It's going to offset that, obviously.
No, and that's the thing too is, like we're going back to all of our sellers that are from 2012 to really today. Hey guys, market's up. You want to move? Let's talk because you might want to have a change of plans. I mean, a lot of people now working from home and, they need that fifth bedroom. And so now I'm trying to find that fifth bedroom that's in an affordable price range. Still in the same school districts, and it's trying to get them to understand, let's think outside the box. Like we may not be in the same neighborhood, but we can move one neighborhood over.
Yep. Two of our biggest clients right now are what we call move-up buyers, which is exactly what you just explained, and millennials. And the other part of it, and this always makes me laugh, a lot of millennials that have been living with their parents are ready to move out because mom and dad are home all the time now. They're working from home. and they're just bumping heads all day, and they're like, that's it, we're out of here. We're going to buy a house. So we're seeing a little influx.
What do we just talk about this? Like, I got to buy a house to get the kids out.
Exactly. Yep.
And then I'll buy it for them because it's an investment for me, and then they're not there. That's funny. this is a bad joke, but when I was living at home with my parents, I owned like 6 or 7 rental properties in my early, I was 19 or 20. And my older sister moved home, and I was like, I don't want you here. I'm going to go buy you a house up by UCF. I'm like, I'm not moving out of mom's house, but here's a rental. Go back to, she's at college. So I'm like, here's a duplex. Go move into that. So it's like, just try, because I was my little safety net. I was home, got home cooked meals, and didn't need to go anywhere, but I had property and I was using private money to buy the stuff. But it's funny when you think about, like, all right, I want the kids out. Let me go buy an investment property for them to move into, and whether they get it for them, whether, you gift it to them, give them the profits, whatever. It's a cool way to, like, again, for the kids, to keep pushing them forward.
Yeah. And I'll tell you one thing that is a good point to off of that you just said, Todd, is a lot of people are having their kids graduate right now. We got a lot of kids graduating, getting ready to go to college, and especially the ones that are moving out of town. They're going to Florida or Tallahassee, or there's still a great opportunity to buy a property for your kid close to campus that you can rent out. And what I'm seeing a lot happening is, it's not just the kid living there, but it's the kid and the kid's friends, or the kid and the kid's sorority brothers or sisters or teammates or whatever. So you get somebody else that's actually paying the bills on your kid's behalf. So it becomes cheaper for you or your child. And it's a great investment. And when you do it that way, you can buy it as a second home, which only requires a 10% down payment and better interest rates than you're going to get on an investment property. So just something for our listeners to think about too.
Now, if I could figure out where my 12 and 13-year-old were, like, going to guaranteed go to college, I would be buying property right now for them in that area. And, Ryan's got himself set on 2 places. Emily, we're not sure. And so it's like, but it'd be cool to, like, go to Gainesville and buy a house, or go to Tallahassee and buy something there now. And then one, it's already paid down. 2, it's like, cool, we've already got something secured for them. We're not then waiting until that time. Just a random marketing tip for people that are driving around the neighborhoods. You want to see somebody who's a potential seller. They have class of 2021 senior sign in their front yard. And those are potential sellers because the kid is graduating and they're moving out and they're trying to downsize. We see that all the time. Not that I'm stalking people's neighborhoods, but a lot of our sellers, they're calling us right now because the kids are graduating and they want to get out of that property. It's like the last kids in the house or something. And they've got a beach house or something else that they want to get into. Or just they'll go stay at. So the consensus is the market's not going to crash. We're still going to thrive and survive. We're going to still see some good low rates. We still got another couple years of positivity ahead of us. You just got to keep to the grind, stay in touch with your database. And really, if you stay in touch with your database, you're going to find those sellers that are there and teach them how to move up or move over and find inventory for your buyers.
Yeah, another thing I'll point out too, Todd, there's a lot of concern about the forbearances that are out there.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So as we know, back when COVID started, a lot of lenders offered forbearances for clients, particularly those that, lost their jobs or had hardships. A lot of those have started to pay them back and they're back on track with their mortgage. However, there's still a lot of properties out there that are in forbearance. And there are still people that have obviously been affected. Their income has been affected by COVID. So the big concern is, hey, are all of these forbearances eventually going to lead to a big pool of foreclosures hitting the market? Yeah. And if so, will this cause the market to crash? Well, there's a couple things I want to point out. Number one is that look at the unemployment rate where it is versus where it was back when COVID really impacted everybody. We're seeing more and more people every day get back to work. We're seeing more job opportunities open. Here in Florida, we obviously have, the whole state's wide open, and for the most part, small businesses, companies are all back to work. So that's all great news because those folks are going to be paying those payments. They're going to get out of the forbearance and they're going to just move on with their mortgage. But let's just forecast and say that there is a large number of these forbearances that go into foreclosure. Well, one of the things that the banks learned back in 2008 was not to release all of these foreclosures into the market at once, right? So I've heard the analogy that it's sort of like letting air out of a tire, right? You're just going to kind of one little spurt at a time. You're going to throw a few foreclosures out into the market, and that will have very, very, very little impact on the market value or the market in general. So even if we do start to see the foreclosure rates increase, the banks have all gotten together, and they understand that this is how we need to do this, and they're not going to cause this flood of inventory coming out there. I mean, frankly, it probably wouldn't hurt to have a little flood of inventory out there right now, but I don't think the banks are going to cause any damage to the market.
No, and I agree with you 100% there, because I think let's just say you've got 100 properties in forbearance. Probably 50 of those the people will stay in the homes. They're going to put the balance on the back of the mortgage, and then the other 50 are going to have to go to foreclosure, and they'll probably release them 10 at a time. But we do need the inventory, and because of the lack of inventory, people are still it's going to help bring the buyers back in. We just won't. Maybe we'll get down to a point where we don't have 17 offers, only have 8 offers on a property because they were able to find other stuff. I'm seeing a couple of trustee sales that I'm showing this weekend that are like in the $1.5 million range, and those are they're showing that they could do the process quickly, which is great because I don't want to show something in like a short sale, wait 6 months to get an answer. But everybody's in an equity position as well right now. I mean, unless you bought it last year, or even if you bought it last year, you're 18 or 20% up, like you said. So if you had to pay full realtor fees, closing costs, and everything, and even paid the buyer's closing cost, you're still walking out with a profit. And if you didn't pay your mortgage for 6 months, I mean, you might be down to zero equity, and that's buying your house with 100% financing.
Right.
So I think there's still some time. I mean, there's the short sale market like we had before. I don't think it's going to really kick in like it did we had back in 2008 and 2009.
Yeah. Yep. I think we're in good shape. We had a nice little drop in rates. It's a perfect time right now to buy. I'm excited. Yeah. We've got more and more people that are coming in. And I think that you guys, the real estate professionals, have made your adjustments too on not only pricing, but setting proper expectations for your buyers and your sellers. I'm starting to see more and more appraisals come in at value again, which is a nice thing.
It's always a struggle. I got one this morning. I was like, what? That place appraised? Oh my God. Happy Friday. I can celebrate.
I know, right? Yeah, exactly.
We had an inspection done last week or Monday, and they came back to us finally yesterday with wanting a $5,000 adjustment on price. And we're still $5,000 over asking price, still $25,000 over what the place probably is worth. But that's like another one. I mean, when will that appraisal come in? And I'm happy to adjust downward because I don't have to worry about the credits. I have a better, safer chance for the appraisal hitting and stuff. It'll make life that much easier. So, well, as we wrap up, Laurence, I appreciate you jumping on today. And, it's a good Friday call because everyone's worried about what will the market do. And the common question we're all keep getting is, will the market crash? And there's so much money out there to come into the market that, I don't foresee it happening. Be prepared and definitely put some money away. But, it's not going to drop, like it did in 2008.
Yeah, for sure. And there's all kinds of really good low down payment options available out there right now. So for those that are looking to buy and just, keep some money, not spend every penny they have getting into the house, that'd be a great conversation for me to have with those buyers and just give them their options.
So before we break, here's a question on that comment. When I'm looking at contracts, I'm seeing 3% down, 5% down, 20% down. How do I make a 3% down buyer contract look strong?
Well, I mean, some of these 3% buyers are, 780 credit scores. There's a Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac programs out there for strong borrowers that just want the option to be able to put less money down. And it could be that they're first-time home buyers. It could be that their income is maybe at a certain level. We're going to still qualify them the same way that we qualify every single buyer. So we're going to pre-underwrite the file. We're going to nail down their income with our underwriters. We're going to run desktop underwriting, which is our automated underwriting through Fannie Mae. And we're going to have it all but approved by the time we're sending out that pre-approval letter. So, that's the strength. The strength today is not only the pre-approval letter, but who it is that's pre-approving that loan. And I'm seeing listing agents more and more scrutinizing who the lender is. And man, I'm getting calls all the time. I reach out to the listing agents, but they're beating me to the punch. So as soon as an offer is being made, I'm getting a call from the listing agent. Hey, tell me about these buyers. Tell me when you can close. Can we close in 30 days? Do you see any problems? So those conversations are being made more now than they ever have. And it's just helping for the listing agent and to be able to help their sellers pick the best offer. And the lending side of it is so important today. It's more important today than it ever has been.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that part, because I love when the lenders call out and reach out. The offer on this appraisal or the house that we just got the appraisal news this morning on, I got a call from the lender on a Sunday night, and he goes, "Hey, I just want to let you know the strength of our borrower that's here." And I called the agent and just say, "Hey, we're taking your offer. We love the price. We had one a little bit higher, but your lender called and reached out to us on Sunday night." She's like, "He did? That's different." I'm like, "Well, you should thank him for that, because your buyer got the deal."
Yeah,
and
awesome.
it helped with that, because there's only a couple of questions I need to vet to the lender. One, how far are you into them? What's their true cash position? And you can answer what you want and what you feel comfortable answering. And I tell the buyers, look, tell them whatever you want. Give them permission to say everything, because you want to know, almost down to the blood type, what these people have, because it helps me to make the sellers more comfortable that I want to go forward with that agent.
Yeah.
Before it used to be the lender and the realtor who had the brand. Now it's like there's so many agents coming into the influx. If you got a new realtor with a good lender, they can help support that connection as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's great to be able to share that information, because most of the listing agents I talk to are very knowledgeable about, the criteria for financing. So
yeah,
credit scores, debt to income ratios, cash in the bank, reserves, all that stuff goes into that conversation, and it definitely helps.
Cool. Well, any final tips? Otherwise, I think we've convinced the audience that the market will not crash, the market will survive, and we will thrive and keep things rolling forward.
Yeah, the only tip I would say for agents specifically is set proper expectations, and explain to the clients that they're going to have to go through. They're going to have to provide a lot of paperwork, and that makes it easier for us. It makes it easier for the clients as well. We're not going to send out a pre-approval letter without looking at the bulk of what we need to get their loan approved. We just don't want any red flags down the road. We don't want any hiccups in that transaction. So it's a lot of work on the front end, but it's worth it, because you get a buyer with a good, strong pre-approval letter and a good lender behind them, supporting them. You got a much better chance of getting that offer accepted.
And that's the biggest thing. Work with for us, it's working with a local lender, because if there's a problem, I can go down to the office and talk to them and have that conversation. I can get a hold of you. That's my biggest thing. When we work with our buyers, if they're calling from Rocket Mortgage, hey, just get a second opinion. Let me show you what local can do versus national. It makes a huge difference for everything. So, well, everyone, I appreciate you guys tuning in today. We had a nice audience, and if you guys have any questions, reach out to myself on the real estate side, and reach out to Laurence on the mortgage side. He's a great local lender we've got here in the Orlando market.
Thanks, Todd. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, definitely appreciate it. You guys have a great weekend.
All right, take care.
And